everyone. In this tutorial we'll have a look at the Arduino and how to use it to create this color changing lamp. Alright, for this project we are going to need an Arduino, of course, a breadboard or circuit board, prototyping board, sorry, that these are sometimes called, a handful of connection leads, some resistors. In our case, these are 220 ohm resistors, although one of them I actually had to use the 330 because I just didn't have any 220s, but that won't affect the project. I have a 4-pin LED which has 3 different colored lights in it, a red and a green and a blue, and then the fourth pin is the ground. With a 4-pin LED, the longest pin is actually the ground. This is opposite to a typical LED where it's the shortest pin is the ground, and that's the one that goes to my negative connection. So I'm going to go ahead and push these into the breadboard so that I have something to connect to. The second one from the end, right here, this guy right here, is my ground, and so I'm going to go ahead and actually attach a pin to him. There we go. So that is my ground. Okay, now for my other 3 pins, I'm actually going to just take a resistor and I'm going to connect it across to the other side of my board. With any LED, you have to have a resistor because if you don't, you'll actually end up with too much current going through it and you can burn out your LED, or even worse, you can burn out your Arduino board. Now I'm going to connect some leads to go back to my board. When you have it arranged this way, so the flat side of my LED is right here, then the closest end, this is my red, and so that I can keep track of that being the red pin, I'm just going to go ahead and use a red lead. The next lead is green, and that's right beside it, so I'm going to go ahead and use my green lead. And lastly is my blue, and I would use a blue lead. Unfortunately, I only have black ones, so I'm just going to use black to represent my blue for this purpose. Alright, we're all set except for connecting to the Arduino, which I have here. Now when you're looking at the Arduino, you'll notice that some of these pins have a little tilde beside them. Those pins on your digital output that have a tilde mean that those pins will actually do an analog output, and it'll actually change the voltage by values from 0 to 5 volts, represented in the program by 0 to 255. So I'm going to use, for the red pin, I'm going to use pin 3 because that has a tilde on it. For the green pin, I'm going to use pin 5. And for the blue pin, I am going to use pin 6. And then lastly, I have my little ground here, and there's lots of grounds on your board, so you just find one that's labeled GND anywhere on the board, and push it in there. So I'll stick this code at the bottom of the video, but this is really all that's required to make the nightlight work. I said we've got red pin was going to be 3, and the green color was on pin 5, and the blue color was on pin 6. I can also send a number from 0 to 255, which will basically determine how much voltage, or how much power, if you like, goes into pins 3, 5, and 6. So I'm going to start with all 3 of those turned off. Now, the setup function, this is in any Arduino program, will only run once, and all I'm doing in here is I'm setting up the red pin, which again is pin 3, to be an output pin, the green pin to be an output pin, and the blue pin to be an output pin. Now, in any Arduino program, the loop is where the real work happens, and basically once you plug in your Arduino, whatever's inside that loop will run over and over and over again until you unplug your Arduino. So let's take a look at what we do here. So I start with an analog write, red pin, red shade. So red pin we said is 3, so I want to write to pin 3 the shade of 0, which means basically red turned off. Then I'd like to wait for 40 milliseconds, and that's just so that it doesn't flicker so fast you can hardly tell the color. Then I'm going to do the same with the green pin, wait 40 seconds. I'm going to wait or run for the blue pin, wait again for 40 milliseconds. And then finally, I'm going to add 1 to the red shade. I'm going to add 2 to the blue shade, and I'm going to add 3 to the green shade. And the only reason I'm adding different numbers is so that the colors come out of sync and we get lots of different colors that appear as it cycles through them. Now, we don't want them to be bigger than 255 because that's the biggest number the port will take. And so my next line is that if the red shade is bigger than 255, then I want it to actually be what it was minus 255, which if, let's say it's 257, that would make red shade 2. And then it starts cycling through again. And that's it. That's all that happens in the program. So now all I have to do to make it run is click my little arrow here to push the code to the Arduino. And when I do, you'll see the lights flicker on the board itself as I send the code to it. And now you can see that my little LED is now lighting up and changing colors. Turn the brightness down so you can see it. And that's it. That is your basic how-to of, in a beginning standpoint for using an Arduino.